Today's video, I titled this, The Principle of Least Action, is actually inspired by a lucid dream that I had last night. So, for those of you that don't know, the kind of dreams where we can actually control our dreams. So there are individuals who intentionally lucid dream for whatever the reason. And there are also those that happen to experience lucid dreams maybe regularly or once in a while. It is said that 55% of people experience a lucid dream at least once in their life. Now, lucid dreaming is something that I actually experimented with a while back, and every now and then I have a unintentional lucid dream. Last night, the experience was actually quite revealing and profound for me, so I want to include it in this discussion. Now, Thursday's video, we were discussing intuition, and some references were made to the Sixth Sense chapter, Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. In that chapter, he also speaks about having invisible council meetings and sessions. And the purpose of these sessions, which he would do in a state akin to sleep, was, as he says, to indulge his imagination with the purpose of rebuilding his own character to represent a composite of the characters of his imaginary council. So he was doing this to adjust his self-image, to embody certain attributes, characteristics that he resonated with. It's a very powerful exercise and process to do. And because he was doing it in a state akin to sleep, he was sharing his experiences of how these individuals seem to have a mind of their own, communicating those attributes to him in ways that he might not have been able to consciously come up with, such as the power of the subconscious mind and the connectivity. The lucid dream that I had last night, which was interesting because it holds parallels to Napoleon Hill's imaginary council. Although this was an unintentional imaginary council in a lucid dream. So I had a dream last night that I was in a room and there was 5 or 6 other individuals in that room. And I don't know who they are. I've never met them before, nor did I have a preference in the matter of who I was going to invite because I didn't intentionally seek to have an invisible council. This one was very different, however. In this room, we were jumping from one corner to another corner. And we all were doing it like it was a normal thing, except we were floating. We were jumping and floating in the air to the other side of the room. Now, at a certain point, while this was happening, I became aware that I was in a dream. And at this point, I started talking to the other individuals and saying, maybe we're here for a reason. Maybe we're here to learn something. We're actually sleeping right now. If you had a lucid dream and you can recall how it was, you recognize it feels as real as this world here. I also recognize that one of the reasons why I was thinking this way was because I always look at every experience in life as something that is teaching me about myself and life. And so it made sense then that I would have that same kind of conversation in this dream, except now I was aware in my dream. So one of the things that we were doing in the dream is we were observing how, when I was very light in saying that I'm going to make a jump and I can float in the air, I would actually be able to do it with ease. But if I overthought the process, or if I was using more of my conscious mind to make the leap and float in the air, I noticed that it wouldn't happen. And we would find this interesting in the conversation, so I believe we were there to learn something from each other. Now, I decided to leave the room in the lucid dream and explore this world. And it was a world like this. And I was doing a lot of different things. I was talking to people, I was jumping over traffic, and a whole bunch of things. And the whole experience felt like it was going on for many hours. At one point, I was thinking to myself, I knew I was dreaming, but maybe I'm here now permanently. And as soon as I had that thought, I was saying to myself, I got to wake up. It kind of steered me up. It shook me. And I woke up and I was lying in bed. And then I was like, oh, that's interesting. Fell back asleep. And again, I'm having these lucid dreams. Every dream that I was having, and it was different dreams, they were lucid dreams. And I was aware that I was dreaming and I could control things. To the point where every time I woke up, I would feel, okay, this is really different. I've never had this kind of experience before. And there was a point where it was kind of, in a way, freaking me out a little bit. And I recognized that, okay, well, this is something that is probably there for me to understand, learn more so. I went back to sleep and it went away and I woke up and I went about my day. And I reflected upon the lessons that were in there. So first of all, there were these individuals that were there, and we were all in this room learning about the same thing. And what we were actually learning is how to use our mind. What we were also learning is this principle of least action. I felt the lessons that were in that unintentional invisible counsel and that experience that I had, the lucid dream, continue to emphasize what we've been already discussing. So let's look at a quote here from Neville. He says, "The principle of least action governs everything in physics, from the path of a planet to the path of a pulse of light. Least action is the minimum of energy multiplied by the minimum of time. Therefore, in moving from your present state to the state desired, you must use the minimum of energy and take the shortest possible time. Your journey from one state of consciousness to another is a psychological one. To make the journey, you must employ the psychological equivalent of least action, and the psychological equivalent is mere assumption." So I found this to be very synchronistic, that I ended up feeling inspired to read Power of Awareness again. And then I felt inspired to go look at the Principle of Least Action chapter. And I found that what Neville was saying in here is exactly what we were talking about in my lucid imaginary council with these individuals that I've never met before. We were talking exactly about this. And as mentioned, when I was aiming to jump across the room or float across the room, fly across the room, in my dream, I was able to do it with mere assumption. But if I was trying to force the thought, trying to get myself to believe, and this is very nuanced, it was more so apparent in my dream, but I understand how this is now, because we've been tying this into intuition and feeling. So what we want is a light assumption. We want to bring ourselves to a place of, I assume it's going to be this way, somehow, in relation to our goals, in relation to our vision, which is the principle of least action, and moving from one state of mind to another state of mind through mere assumption, and this takes practice, doing this. What we find is it's easier to get into the state of mind or the feeling of the wish fulfilled that is one with the vision. So you go day to day on your journey to doing whatever it is that you do, and you recognize that some way, somehow, the things you're doing, and you might be consciously aware of those things and how they relate, or might not even know, power of the subconscious mind. Some way, somehow, these things, the bridge of incidents, is leading to the end. If for whatever the reason may be, we have thoughts of fears, doubts, indecision, insecurity that we begin to identify with, at that point, perhaps a person has become reactive. What he's suggesting is using the principle of least action. And what was discussed in this invisible council, lucid dream that I had, is by mere assumption, a lightness of thinking to switch into a different state. Now, this is something that, as we were going through the works of the Kabbalion and other discussions, and practicing this information, we're finding it easier, more so every day, to switch our state of mind real time. If you find yourself being reactive, you recognize that you are not that reactivity, and you think something different, and you go into that state of mind by identifying with that thinking. As mentioned, one of the ways that I practiced this for years is to write my goal or my definite chief aim on a card and carry it with me. I learned this from The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale, as well as it was discussed in Think and Grow Rich. And if for whatever the reason may be, not even questioning it, you go into a different state of mind, you feel reactive, identify with fear, indecision, and so forth, you pick up the card and you read it, and right away you go back into the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the oneness with the vision. Now, through the process of using it again and again and again over the years, I found that it was easier to rely upon this. So what he's suggesting here is take it a step further and go into mere assumption. I already am that person right now. That's who I am right now. I am an effective communicator. I am worthy to receive the prosperity. I am worth it for this client to do business with, do this deal with. Right now, I feel it. Because by working with the power of the subconscious mind, we recognize that there's a feeling associated, a meaning associated to words, sentences, and so forth. And at any moment, you can have a conversation with someone, and they could say something to you, or they could share some information, or you could dialogue with them. And you get into a different state of mind. I recognize that this is actually one of the important aspects of personal development. Is if you ever watch a personal development video or you read a book, the conversation or the points or the way it's presented switches our states of mind. Someone might say something to you. They might give you a certain perspective. And that perspective resonates with you. It changes your view, such as one of the things that I had learned from Think and Grow Rich, where he said, if you believe that money is the result of hard work alone, perish the thought. See, I come from a background where everything was hard work and force-based. It took me a while to, and more so each day, release from excessive force and rely much more on lightness of certain conversation or certain words or certain assumptions, specifically put, and identify with those assumptions as the now, as in I am that person now. It took me a while. I believe a lot of it has to do with reference experience. Could I have got to that destination overnight? Perhaps. But from my own experience, I found it was getting lighter as the days go by. So he says, the day you fully realize the power of assumption, you discover that it works in complete conformity with this principle. It works by means of attention minus effort. Thus, with least action, through an assumption you hurry without haste and reach your goal without effort. Because creation is finished. What you desire already exists. It is excluded from view because you can see only the contents of your consciousness. Now, just hearing something like that adds more power to assumption, or as he says, dare to assume, and creation is complete. What would happen? Well, when I look back on my journey and through many conversations that I've had with individuals, not in lucid dreams, in real life. Now, if this lightness exists within you in relation to words, in relation to assumption, what we want to develop more so every day, we recognize it's easier for us to speak things into existence, to talk ourselves into certain states of mind, to say something to ourselves or others which switches the state of mind. We get better at it with practice, more so every day. And this is why I'm an advocate for self-talk or conversations with individuals who can give you perspectives, who can look at your perspectives and perhaps select a lighter perspective, such as what Napoleon Hill had shared. If you believe that money is a result of hard work alone, definitely, it can be a result of hard work, because prior to reading that statement, that's how I was able to do it. Bring forth money through hard work. Then I started to lighten up on it. I said flow work, some way, somehow, unexpected ways, doing what I really love to do. And everything began to change some way, somehow. The professions, how I went about doing things, how money would show up through expected and unexpected sources. So sometimes I say unexpected sources, but I like to say now expected and unexpected sources. Some way, somehow, doing what I really love to do in unknown ways. Some way, somehow. These are assumptions. Now, what these assumptions do is create a more lighthearted, flow-based, loving, joyous-based bridge of incidents to realizing a vision. Now, we can hear this message thousands of times or said hundreds of thousands of different ways. The real way is to practice this, is to assume that some way, somehow, day to day, this principle of least action will show up. For example, in the dream, it was jumping in the air, flying in the air across the room, and practicing in the dream, working with thinking and assumption and identifying and watching it happen. What we can also do is assume when you have a conversation with your prospect that this conversation is going to go easier and flow-based, more so than it has ever gone in any conversation or any prospecting call in the past. Assume that when you wake up today, it's going to be easier to do the things that you know you have to do. Assume that some way, somehow, unexpected resources, relationships will show up some way, somehow. Assume it and see what happens. Now, this is related also to intuition, so thus I recommend watching the video yesterday, because I believe intuition guides us into these opportunities. So he says, it is the function of an assumption to call back the excluded view and restore full vision. It's not the world, but your assumptions that change. An assumption brings the invisible into sight. It is nothing more or less than seeing with the eye of God, i.e., imagination. So he says, for the Lord seeth not as a man seeth, for man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. The heart is the primary organ of sense, hence the first cause of appearance. When you look on the heart, you are looking at your assumptions. Assumptions determine your experience. So another way of saying this is heart desires. Follow your heart and intuition. They somehow know what you want to become, as Steve Jobs said in his commencement speech. Now, the heart desires might appear to go against what the five sensory world suggests as possibility. And this is where we have the opportunity to practice the power of assuming that reality will rearrange to reflect our vision some way, somehow, by allowing ourselves to speak ourselves into a different state of mind. Now reflect on this for a moment. I trust that you know somebody, a friend, maybe it's my videos, that if you have a conversation with them, it brings you into a different state of mind. What's happening is a conversation. And this conversation is usually stimulated by a feeling. If you really break down and see what this other individual is doing, is they're really going into the feeling themselves of how they want to represent you. And the words expressed in some way, somehow, could be through the words, known or unknown ways. We also begin to resonate with that feeling because that's the feeling we want to be in as well. We have the ability to do this with others, and we have the ability to do this with ourselves. Now, what I have found is, although I still like to work with this definite chief aim card that I still keep with me on my phone, which has always been how I brought forth my definite chief aim since 2004 when I read Think and Grow Rich, I also enjoy practicing speaking myself into different states of mind, wherever it is that I am. Everywhere I go, I practice more so being present and aware to the connection to intuition, the feeling of the wish fulfilled, knowing that some way, somehow, wherever I am, whatever it is that I'm doing, it's leading me to the vision. And if for whatever the reason I have an experience or some kind of reactivity-based interpretation plays out as theater in the five sensory experience with another person, with an environment, with a circumstance, whatever, I recognize that those are interpretations, and I'm able to speak myself into an accurate way of looking at it, or assume the best, or assume the ideal about whatever it is that shows up. For example, let's say you had a discussion with someone and it made you feel reactive, shameful. You can right away assume in that moment you accept yourself, that you already are ideal, divine perfection. I am in my ideal now. And what you'll notice as soon as you say that is a feeling will start to emerge that represents the truth of that assumption. And then be aware to that feeling and encourage the feeling. Since I'm a conversation person, I'll talk about it a little bit. Now, I don't have to talk about it a lot. I just talk about it a little with another person or myself. And then next thing I know is I'm actually in an ideal state of mind, a flow-based state of mind. So he says, the present moment is all important, for it is only in the present moment that our assumptions can be controlled. The future must become the present in your mind if you would wisely operate the law of assumption. The future becomes the present when you imagine that you already are what you will be when your assumption is fulfilled. Be still, and he puts in brackets, least action, because being still, surrendering to the present moment, is least action. And know that you are that which you desire to be. So there it is right there. Know that you are that which you desire to be. The end of longing should be being. Translate your dream into being. Now, this is also another way of speaking of faith, as we've been discussing faith, loyalty to the unseen reality, unseen as present fact, the feeling of oneness with the vision that some way, somehow, we might not know how, or you may know how, you're going to get to that end, your vision. And reality is rearranging, the five sensory experience is rearranging some way, somehow to reflect that vision. Now, if I say that to you, and I just did, and it awakens that feeling of calm or a feeling of a higher degree of certainty. And this is why what we want to do is practice being still more often. I gave many suggestions in the last video. I'll put a link in the description to that. I recommend watching it. Practice, as he states here, The present moment is all important, for it is only in the present moment that our assumptions can be controlled. And this is why how we feel plays an important role on how we relate to the now, or what we're experiencing in the now, and what is to become. And what we're looking for is the feeling of the wish fulfilled, which is the intuitive connection with our vision, or in general, an intuitive feeling of, calm, I know. The power behind this is, I want to share my experiences with you. I find more so today than ever before, I know what to do and what not to do. And I don't even add any explanation as to why I want to do it or why I don't want to do it. I know what to do, and I know what not to do via intuition. Now you have this. You've experienced this. Maybe you're experiencing this more so today. My goal is to assist you, guide you, encourage you to experience this even more so, because this transcends overthinking. The feeling of I know what to do and I know what not to do brings us into a deeper level of integration of the principle of least action. So we can use the principle of least action to bring ourselves into the state of mind by speaking it into, assuming us a certain way, by imagining something or saying something that would imply that you already are that person right now. Could be as simple as, I am self-confident. I am ideal now. I live in divine perfection now. Or it could be more detailed, like a conversation that you have with yourself or another person that brings you into that feeling. So we could do that. Principle of least action through our assumptions. Another thing we can do, working with this principle here, is to recognize that intuition guides us to the principle of least action, into the opportunities, and how to move forward with the opportunities, who to contact, what business to pursue, what marketing strategy to do, or any other aspect of decision that needs to be made on the journey to realizing the vision. We could say decisions are automatic when we are connected, which we always are, connected to intuition. And when I say when we're connected, what I'm really referring to is releasing from overthinking. And as mentioned, what I discussed in the last video, doing activities like that helps you release from the overthinking. And then what happens is you get to the destination via the principle of least resistance, some way, somehow. Now, this is something that, as mentioned, I have to thank my Invisible Council session last night, the Lucid Dream Invisible Council. I have no idea who these individuals are. But to the conversations that we were having, it seems like we were all learning the same thing in this room. It seems life has this resemblance and similarity where here we are thrown into this world and we're figuring out, why are we here? What do we want to do while we're here? And one of the important aspects of being here is to really honor the desire and see the desires into existence. Bring your visions into reality. Because then this way of going about doing it, which is maintaining that connection with intuition, plus having the ability to speak ourselves into different states of mind, is developed to a higher degree, and then we feel a higher degree of self-confidence, inner peace. And that's what many are looking for, a higher degrees of self-confidence. So what I would like to encourage is further practice of this. And further practice of this, I mean, we could talk about this for hours. Further practice of this is being a little lighter with our words with ourselves. So we may say things a little bit more based on let's say, a higher lighter assumption. Like Napoleon Hill had suggested, all of this is a suggestion. We can choose what we want to identify with as far as suggestions go. We can suggest that perhaps it can be a little bit more flow-based. Maybe that's something we can include in our affirmations today as we conclude this discussion. And we're going to revisit the power of the subconscious mind because I'm starting to understand how the subconscious mind works even more so now. Yesterday, I sit down and I read a little bit of Think and Grow Rich and I record this video. And then in the night, I'm having a lucid dream where I'm learning stuff in the lucid dream with others in the dreams. And what has been learned in those dreams has been brought forth into existence here to further emphasize what we're discussing. Some way, somehow is guided to, from within to, this principle of least action, which makes even more sense to me. It's interesting how the subconscious mind works in ways that may not make any logical sense, but that's okay. We don't need to figure it out, really. What we want to do is honor the intuitive nudges and inspiration found within and see where it takes us. So let's conclude this with an affirmation. And the goal here is really applying this principle of least action, embracing it a little bit more so. You can say, I recognize every day that I have the ability to speak things into existence. I can assume anything because creation is finished, and I navigate reality via what I assume. What I assume hardens into facts. Thus, I assume the path of least resistance, as it resonates with my heart, the first cause of experience. Assumptions have the power of objective realization. Through this power that's inherent within me, I'm able to tap more into abilities that I have, that I'm able to recognize more so by being present to what I feel. The feeling of intuition guides me to the assumptions to identify with, to bring forth my vision via the principle of least action. I do it automatically, and I find decisions happening automatically as I honor the feeling. I assume automatic ideal expression and automatic decision and automatic knowing, understanding that this is who I am. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.